So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about two epidemics, how they've influenced my own journey, and ask the question, are we really at the beginning of the end? But it's been with treatment that the conversation has really started to change, and we've started to hear things like elimination, eradication, and the beginning of the end. From the popular press to the scientific literature, all of these words are being used. So despite these different trajectories of drug development, we find ourselves at a similar place for both infections, asking really similar questions. But where are we really, right? Where are we with respect to these modeling projections? How many people have access? So with HIV, with things like development of generic antiretrovirals, programs like PEPFAR and the Global Fund, we've seen access improve dramatically across the world. But still today, fewer than 34% of infected individuals who need treatment in low and middle income countries actually are on it. For hepatitis C, we've seen conversations again about generic antivirals starting already. But the picture for treatment is a little bit more stark, with fewer than 5 or 10% actually having access to medications globally. Beyond this, there's disproportionate burden by groups that seems to be growing, right? So across the world, HIV incidence seems to be declining in most countries, but in some risk groups, it's not the case, right? So among men who have sex with men, young women in Southern Africa, and people who inject drugs, in many parts of the world, incidence is actually still increasing. As you can see from this map, of the estimated 11 to 21 million injection drug users, upwards of 6 million may be infected with HIV, and up to 15 million are estimated to be infected with hepatitis C. Hepatitis C has always disproportionately infected injection drug using populations, with up to 80% being infected. So if we want to think really about any sort of global elimination strategy, we're going to have to address all of these groups, including injection drug users. So there are a number of challenges. If we want to think about elimination, control, eradication, what have you, number of challenges, but this is the one that I'm going to focus on here today, which is targeting where the burden is, even if that's where it's hardest to reach. And that's where most of my work has focused, on injection drug using populations. So I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities to reaching this group, and I'm going to do it from the lens of two settings. So some differences between these two settings, but also a number of common themes, right? We see across both settings suboptimal engagement in HIV and hepatitis C care, a combination of individual and structural barriers, and then an increasing burden of hepatitis C morbidity and mortality. So what do we do? And so this is a project that's really focused on trying to treat that group that's not going to have access through any other sources, right, that would be likely to be turned down by insurance. This is actually a multi-site trial. You can see the cities that we're in. We're in 8 cities, and the PI is actually Alan Litwin in New York. And actually, this is not something we've been funded to do. This is a proposal that just went in a couple of days ago. But it illustrates, I think, well, the kinds of things that we're really interested in. And what we've proposed is a combination structural individual level intervention. The intervention is essentially the same in both. It's a one-stop shop, basically all services that an IDU or an MSM would need in a single site that's tailored to that population, right, to address some of those stigma issues as well. So for the MSM sites, which is led by David Celentano, we're mostly in southern India. And for the IDU sites, you can see we're in north and central, again, in northeast India. The design is essentially an intervention that's nested within 2 cross-sectional studies, right? So the intervention will run for 2 years. The first cross-sectional sample was taken at baseline, and the second will be taken after the intervention has run for 2 years. The model that we've built, and even the models that I've been talking about in Baltimore, they're all still focused on creating this safe space, right? A center that people can come to and receive all of the services they need. But they're still asking people to come to us, right? We're still saying, basically, it's a we'll build it and you'll come model. And so maybe that's working for some people, but perhaps it's not enough for others, right? So we've essentially increased the supply of services, but perhaps there's not enough demand. And so in particular, we don't seem to necessarily be hitting the seek component, right? So we feel like there are more people out there that we're not seeing. And so this is really where I see the next 3 to 5 years of our work, kind of trying to figure out how we reach the hardest of the hard to reach. So with that, I go back to the question that I posed at the beginning. Are we at the beginning of the end? Should we even be talking about the beginning of the end, given that there are so many challenges? Some of this, excitement around all of this has been criticized because it's been said that maybe it's leading to over optimism, and maybe it's actually in some ways leading to complacency if people think that we're really done, both from the research community and from funders. We know there are challenges, but hope can be a powerful motivator, right? So the idea that maybe we can, the mantras about test and treat, the beginning of the end of AIDS, the beginning of the end of hepatitis C, are powerful motivators for change, right? So they have spearheaded large campaigns to eliminate AIDS from New York and San Francisco, efforts to defeat hepatitis C in Rhode Island and New York City. And even here in Baltimore, we've at least started to have conversations about a comprehensive strategy for a C-free Baltimore. So whether we're at the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning, I'm not sure it really matters. I think it's clear that the story, a lot of the story, has yet to be written. Much work needs to be done. Thank you.